Right. Happy Friday. Really excited to see some of the faces in the audience. Really excited to have some of you here. I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts, everyone's ideas, because this really is going to be a conversation. This is really something I think that all of us should have an opportunity to contribute to, because I believe that AI touches every single one of us. So today we're going to be chatting about DEI and ChatGPT with the subtitle, Will AI Enable or Stifle Diversity and Inclusion? And I'm so excited about today's guest because I think that she is amazing. But before I introduce our guest, I just want to say thank you so very much for joining us today. You could be anywhere, but you are here spending time with us, and we really appreciate it. This is meant to be an opportunity to connect, learn, and share. I'm sure some of us might have different ideas, different thoughts, and that's okay. We're not going to agree on everything, but this is really meant to be a safe space for everyone to share their perspective and to give, their ideas and experiences as well. A quick introduction for those of you maybe who don't know me. I'm a certified executive and leadership coach. I also do learning and development facilitation and speaking. I also have a podcast called the Open Door Conversations podcast. And the long and short of it is my content, the work I do is meant to help executives and founders that are juggling a million responsibilities evolve from taskmasters to being really strategic leaders. And I think that hosting conversations like this are important, because conversations like this are things that leaders, execs, human beings need to keep in mind, because it does touch them and does have an impact on who they are, how they show up, and the work that they do as well. I'd love to invite my amazing guest, Olanike, and please tell me if I'm pronouncing that incorrect, but I think that's close.
I think,
I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
yes. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, wonderful. I changed the mic to my headset. Hi, everybody. My name is Olanike Nyame-Mensah. I am a workplace equity strategist. I have been blessed, really, to have lived a life since childhood of being born in one place and raised in two different places. I was raised both in Nigeria, different places around Nigeria, and different places around the United States. And so this sort of planted some seeds that eventually turned into diversity, equity, and inclusion work. There's a long story there that I won't get into right now, but because of my life experiences and being exposed to different cultures, different nationalities, different subcultures within broader differences across culture, I really honed, my ability to be able to see difference. And because I was exposed to that so young, I started out being really curious and welcoming of difference, and realized that everyone didn't approach it the same way. And as I came into young adulthood and my career, I started to really pay attention to not just personal and interpersonal impacts of division and oppression, and all the isms, but also how it was embedded in systems. And so because that, I spent a lot of my time at work, that's where I started to do a lot of my advocacy work, a lot of volunteerism for what became D&I, diversity and inclusion, and what ultimately became DEI. And we have all the acronyms right now. But I like to tell people that, the work that I do now, and I get to do this full time. My business is called Mosaic Consulting. After 20 plus years of doing this work, I'm still continuing to grow and evolve and learn. And there are always new applications for us to think about how human beings have leveraged difference for gain, and how we need to do better. And so I do everything that I can in life, and definitely do my work, my consulting work, to help push us towards that better vision of true freedom, true liberation, true equity, for all of us, not just some dominant identity groups across the world. So I do a lot of that work in workplaces and institutions, and I'm happy to be here today to talk about this. I did work in tech for a stint. I had a stint in tech where I really got an up close look at the tech world and learned a lot about coding and bias in coding, and some about AI back then as well. So thank you for inviting me to this conversation today. I'm looking forward to learning from you and from all the folks that have joined as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. And just a quick little bit of engagement with the audience. I'd love to know how many of you work in DEI. Let us know if just a reaction, a bit of emoji. We'd love to know who else in the room works in DEI. Yes, Marie,
Ooh,
love it.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Tisha, Linda,
Sonia.
amazing. Amazing.
Yeah,
Thank
wonderful.
you so much for letting us know. Always curious. And then maybe let's see who's here in the tech space. Do you work in tech? Do you work with data? Let us know with just a quick reaction. Okay. All right. We have some who cover both. Yes, I love it.
Oh, I love it.
Anisha, yes. Mohammed, glad to see
Okay.
you.
Mohammed, yes.
Great. Okay, good.
Charlotte,
It's
nice.
always nice to know a little bit about the audience, and we really, really encourage you. That's what these conversations are about. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question or share your perspective, because I think there's so much we can learn from each other. So before we get started with the questions, one of the things I actually wanted to do was just share a poll. So what I try and do now is just weekly do a poll related to the conversation that I'm hosting on Friday. And I knew I was going to have this conversation with Olanike and the rest of you. So I asked, do you use AI in your day-to-day work? And I was really surprised. I didn't get a crazy number of votes, but I was surprised by the votes that I got, because the majority, 33% of the almost 40 people that voted, said nope, that they do not use AI in their day-to-day work. And I was really, really surprised, because we use artificial intelligence anytime we open our laptops, our phones, right? Anytime we're on LinkedIn, even that algorithm, right? There is some decision being made to show you specific things, right? If you're looking at your feed. So just wanted to start off with that it seems that for a lot of us, we might not be aware of where AI is being used. So what I wanted to do was just start off with a quick, very basic definition that I found online. What is AI? The simulation of human intelligent processes by machines, especially computer systems. And an algorithm, right? Any sort of social media feed, that is something that is being simulated to either show you things that you might like based on things that you favorited in the past or things that you've engaged with in the past. And so even your social media feed, right, could be showing you specific things that can have an impact on you. And make you feel a certain way, or even potentially show up in a particular way as well. And so I just wanted to start there, just to, I guess, sort of lay that foundation that AI is everywhere. And that's why I think it's so important to have this conversation. And so maybe let's start off with our first question. And once again, I just want to remind the audience, at any point in time, you are welcome to raise your hand and to share your perspective. But our first question here is, how can AI enable inclusion? How can it be used to create a more diverse and inclusive world?
Yeah. It's such an interesting question, and I've been thinking about it and wrestling with it, really, because to me, asking a question like this, how can AI enable inclusion? I go like theoretical, right? And I think AI is a tool. It's kind of like if we would have asked, 20, 30 years ago, how can the internet enable inclusion, right? Like, how can anything enable inclusion? And so, not to like take us too theoretical, but I think I will just a little bit. And actually, I would argue that it's not theoretical, it's real life, is that, what is happening already with our tools, with these algorithms, with AI, is that it is really already based on a dominant identity group, and it's built by a dominant identity group. Now, my experience, for those who are listening to this, was almost after we moved from Nigeria back to the U.S. when I was 10. That's where I've lived for the majority of my life. I'm now in Ghana, but only for the last year and a half or so. So my perspective and lens is from that it's from the U.S., from the States. So I would love to hear from others who maybe are not from the States, and to see what you could add to the conversation. But when you think about the way that technology has evolved, and from that perspective, it's already, I don't want to be like doom and gloom, but it's like it's already too late.
Okay.
All the code that we're building more, algorithms around, and it's already biased. There's a wonderful documentary called Coded Bias that I hope folks have seen or that you'll check out. That's just fantastic. First of all, it does cover all the ways that AI is already being used to make decisions that are negatively impacting people's lives, such as facial recognition technology and people being wrongly accused and falsely arrested, right? Because some AI tool said that this was the criminal that you're looking for. And it's not the same, but they can't recognize a melanated face, in this tool, because the people that built it did not look like you and me, right? And so when we talk about, can AI enable inclusion, I wrestle with that question, because I think AI itself already is not, as a tool, has developed all these technology tools and data tools have developed in a way that have already begun to create harm to those of us that are not in the dominant identity group. So generally, theoretically, yes, I think any tool could enable inclusion, but when we're talking about something that has already been designed in an exclusive way, something that is already enabling all the isms, enabling racism, and just kind of already causing a spectrum of harm, from what you might consider just a biased result to someone being falsely arrested, to some people actually being physically harmed and potentially killed. I mean, like the array of things that that could happen. What I'm hoping is that, for those that are in this field, right, the documentary filmmaker Joy Brawlamwini, and I'm probably messing up her name. I think she's Ghanaian, and I don't know how to say that name properly. To like Timnit Jabru, these are the people that I'm following, their thought leadership, and they're the ones that are like squarely in that realm. And those that have identified themselves on the call today, I want to wake more of us up, because that poll result that you have, I feel like the 3-4 years or so that I worked in tech, I felt like the scales just fell off my eyes. Like, whoa, what is all of this? What is AI? It felt like there's a big monster sleeping under the bed, and it's starting to wake up, and harm is starting to happen, and and no one is paying attention. And so every chance that I get to kind of elevate and repost and reshare information about this, I'm sure people think it's very like left field, because I'm like this DEI strategist and nobody's thinking about AI. And every now and then I'll like post something on AI, and they're like, what is this? And I'm sure it's throwing off the algorithms, because they're like, wait, well, this is not what you talk about all the time. But I just think it's so important, because more and more people are acting like this is a neutral tool.
Yes.
And it's not neutral. It's based on bias and all the isms that already exist. And it's going to create more harm if we don't like really kind of do something, do more to stop it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Anyone from the audience want to share their perspective, any other examples they want to share, anything that they've seen within their own experience, or maybe even research related to thinking about AI, whether or not it can, enable inclusion or even maybe stifle it? Yes.
Oh, yes, we have one. Yeah.
Excited. Hi. Excited to see you here. Glad you could make it.
You're on mute.
Thank you for that. Hi, Akua. Hi, Olanike. Nice to be with you both. Thanks for having me up. My name is Marie DeVoe. I'm inclusive leadership coach, and DEI consultant. And I love the conversation already. I have watched the documentary Coded Bias, and so
okay, we'll have to put a link. I haven't seen it, so we'll have to put a link under this chat.
Yeah.
But very much, I think the research that the researcher who's kind of featured in that film kind of exposed is in alignment with a lot of what Olanike has shared, in terms of so much of AI is coded by folks who are human beings, which means they have bias. And tech is filled with, as we all are aware, white cis het individuals. And so they are writing code from their experience and from their lens, and that then shows up in all of our tools. When I saw the topic of today's conversation, I was immediately like, well, how could it be supportive? Because even when we look at how social media uses algorithms, it's very much fueled by confirmation bias. And so we're constantly fed opinions that are in alignment with how we already view the world. In a lot of ways, then your feed is very exclusive. Right?
Yes, no, it is. It's an echo chamber.
Avoiding, right?
Yeah.
So we're always avoiding new perspectives just by way of how these tools are built. And so when I thought about, okay, well, what's the flip side? How could it be used? And even I love how this conversation opened of like, well, we're using AI all of the time. And so I think about some of the automations that I have built into my life and how for me, it's really about how can I use technology to remind me to connect on a human level. And so I have reminders, oh, you haven't spoken to someone in a while, or, reminders about meetings, or you should follow up with this person. And so thinking about, again, if we go back to this idea that technology can't necessarily be good or bad, but it's in how we use the tool. I think there's opportunity for how could these tools allow us to actually be more human instead of allowing it to replace human connection.
Yes. Snap, snap, snap.
I really like that. Yeah.
That's so good. It's making me think about the part of the conversation we're just having. Like, these tools are, based on a very singular slice of humanity, right? The white male cis het perspective, which is what was dominated tech and coding and all of that. And that is about the humans behind the technology being, being why it's biased the way that it is. And now what I'm hearing and the connection I'm making with what you just shared is, well, we are still humans behind the technology. So how can we, the humans behind the technology, the humans that are using these tools, use it in a way that's in alignment with whatever our values are? And that's to like turn the tools, on their heads, right? Use the tools in a way that's actually going to create more human connection and more relationship and more inclusion than what the tool is naturally going to do if we don't think about it that way. Thank you for that.
Yes. I loved that contribution, and recognizing that we can use tools also to remind ourselves of maybe areas where we need to improve, of things we need to check in on. I think that's a fabulous contribution. Thank you so much for that, Marie. Ben, welcome to the stage. We'd love to hear what you have to share.
You're on mute? No?
It doesn't look like he's on mute, but we can't hear you, Ben. Okay, now you're on mute.
Now you're off, but we still can't hear you.
Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Maybe you can try leaving and then joining us again. Or maybe if you are, oh, he's already left. All right. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get him to join us in a bit. All right. So we have another person that has their hand up. And once again, all of you that are here in the audience, we really would love to hear your perspective, especially from the perspective maybe of any engineers in the house, anyone who's really, building some of these algorithms.
Yes.
We'd love to hear your perspective and hear sort of some of the things that you've been considering and whether or not this is even a consideration. So on the stage, we do have, is it
Avtandil, yes. Avto. My short name is Avto. So thank you everyone for this meeting. To conclude, just to ask about some good apps or some good feature for AI that you can suggest me or suggest us for including in our projects or in our daily routines. So thank you very much, and I hope today I will have more new features that I knew before that I can use in the future, and thank you a lot. So I want to really know the AI tool that can really make a great impact in our daily job and also change the perspective labor of hard work we put in our daily basis. So thanks, and I need some suggestion or what suggestions you could give us or new features of AI.
Okay, yeah, definitely going to get to that. That's one of the questions I have on here. Are there any particular AI tools or software? So we will get to that. But thank you for bringing that up. So maybe before we jump to that question, we can hear from, is it Callista?
It's
Welcome.
Callista.
Callista, well, glad to have you here.
Thank you. So I'm Callista. I'm known as your talent fairy godmother, making magic for businesses to keep and retain the best talent. Thank you.
Yes.
And I appreciate Marie for sending me this particular link so I could jump in. So I've been in talent acquisition recruitment for over 15 years, and I've actually had the opportunity to work for a wide range of organizations, right? So I've done things with Coca-Cola Corporate, Wells Fargo, Amazon, and UPMC. I've been on the end of actually seeing it twofold, right? When organizations use AI systems, and then also seeing it on the other side when you actually have a recruiter looking at each individual resume and they have to screen and access people while on the same end training organizations and companies on how to be more inclusive and what it means to create equity around how we see somebody as being accessible for a job and what we consider access, right? Who is your ideal candidate? And that all bleeds into what AI is. I believe that from organizations that maybe use these systems, there's a lot of flaws at times, and flaws meaning somebody may not have one word in their resume and it automatically debunks them. Or potentially there's online assessments that are being used to evaluate and rank people, but generally speaking, individuals of color have a hard and difficult time in passing that. So you may have 100% pool and maybe 60% is diverse, but only 4% actually passes the online assessment. Well, that's a flaw because now we're making an online assessment being the first tool before a resume is even evaluated, and that also casts people out. So I truly believe that there has to be some level of real life training, extensive training for not only recruitment teams and HR individuals, but executives to really understand the nuances of that. I mean, I've worked with organizations where I've suggested that they even omit people's names from portfolios and proposals to ensure that there is look at the person, not the name, and we're not trying to figure out, what their gender is or what their religion is or how old
or even
they
the school
are.
they went to.
Correct,
Like take that off.
exactly. But I've also seen that a lot of major organizations, have what they consider their top tier or profile schools. And a lot of times that also omits access to a more wider pool of candidacy. So I definitely feel, to me, it is something that can create less equity and access within a workplace that doesn't necessarily allow for diversity and inclusion. So those are my takeaways.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That was such a great specific example of how AI has already been used and has been already in play as folks are applying for jobs. And that's not something that I think a lot of job seekers are even aware of, that when you submit that resume, there's a bot like filtering through that in many companies, even though that might not be apparent to the applicant. There is I'm not going to say their name because I don't know that they're particularly great at this, but there is a HR information systems tool that has done a lot of work to embed prompts, into the process for the hiring team and the hiring manager. And it's just makes me want to ask you if you've seen any tools that are particularly more advanced that you would recommend to someone who might be listening to this that is, in a power position to be able to look for a tool that is thinking about equity and inclusion as part of their system?
That's a good question. And as you ask that, I'm actually going to some notes, something that I had before. But one that I would say I have seen and believe that they're probably a little bit ahead of the curve is like Bamboo HR
Okay.
in terms of that particular organization. And then there is also another company as well. And I'm getting the name as well.
All right. Well, when you find that name, please let us know. Great. Really, really great contribution there. Not even something that I even considered, but such a really good point. And I know there was someone else that was trying to make their way onto the stage. Ben, thank you so much for your notes. Ben wanted to add that he was going to add on Marie's thoughts on how we use AI to help us be more human. And his hope is that we leverage AI to see behind the curtain of organizations. And so through scanning employees, posts, and content online, we could leverage AI to give a reality ranking of organizations claiming to be DEI and A advocates. So thank you so much for that, Ben. And if you are open to trying again, we'd love to try and get you up here. So sort of using AI in a bit of a different way to help us better understand whether or not, how organizations claim they are showing up is really how they're showing up. All right, we have 2 people. All right, then hopefully we'll be able to get you speaking. Oh no, don't hear ya. Oh no, not sure what's happening there. I don't know if you have a phone. Maybe try accessing LinkedIn on a different device. Oh, we lost. Was that Miranda?
Yeah, I saw Miranda also on the stage. So Miranda, if you want up there, Miranda's
Great, she's back. Great, allowed to speak. All right, Miranda, welcome. Oh
no, we
lost her again. Technology. The LinkedIn's. Maybe they don't like this conversation. That's what it is.
The algorithm is at work.
Hey there.
LinkedIn is like, what are you talking about over there?
So glad that you could join us up here.
Thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to ask a quick question. In the comment that you just made, do you think that this is why DEI efforts are trying to be currently blocked within workplace like hiring realms in certain states? That they think that this is going to be a tool to be used to look behind that curtain, as mentioned. So it's maybe like an intimidation factor. So that's possibly why it's being currently legally blocked.
Interesting.
Wow, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to noodle on that, but that is I really hadn't thought about that. Tell us your thoughts on that. Do you think that might be what's happening? Is because when you really think about the lawmakers, I think very few of them actually understand any of this technology, right? So, but maybe they do. Maybe they understand it more than they let on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that that's my fear there is, or not my fear, but just my acknowledgement there that that those lawmakers do see the power of this tool, and specifically going back to who coded it. So now that other people, other representations are starting to enter this space, there's going to be additional contributions that point to certain biases being unearthed for the original codings to these programs. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's almost like the creator has stopped and said, "Oh God, what have we created? This monster is growing,"
Mm.
and it's a tool that now we want to block because it's going to point to our own downfall or our own shortcomings. Thank you for having me.
Wow. Yeah, you've given me a lot to chew on there.
Me too. I don't know if anyone else from the audience wants to share their perspective or has an idea. And welcome back to the stage.
Yes, so I just did a little bit of homework because I was trying to get the name of the second organization. There's a company called UKG,
Okay.
and they provide a lot of solutions to organizations around people strategy, people management, culture, and they have a very robust kind of HR tools that could be used within the workplace that I feel like is very progressive.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that work and coming back to the stage to share that second one with us.
Yes. So Bamboo HR and UKG. Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anyone else have another question or another thought they want to share? Want to join us on stage?
You know, one question or thought that I had is, other than you know, the personal use of these tools, right? You know, like creating a reminder for myself on how I want to use the tool differently. You know, every now and then you'll see a post of someone that says, follow these 20 people, you know, to kind of mix in some different perspectives in your algorithm. Like you have to go online and follow different voices to diversify the bubble that you're in on social media. So I think a lot of times I kind of, those suggestions of what to do, I see those more frequently, and I feel like I can sort of do my part there for myself to be, you know, intentional about how I am personally using the tool. But then when I zoom out, like watching that documentary or reading some of the work by Timnit Gebru, then I go like, is there anything that individual me can do about this issue on a big scale, right? You know, aside from elevating their voices on my feed, which is like, you know, the 10 people that pay attention to me online can see that. But
you have more than
like,
that following you and listening.
What is it that the average person can do to support the work of folks like that, right? That are actually, you know, in that ethical AI battle, you know, so to speak. So if anyone in the room has thoughts on that, please come on stage and share those thoughts. It's, you know, capitalism is doing what it does. And I read, I think I actually reposted this article just a couple of days ago. I read an article that said that a report had been published like 30 years prior about ways to address some of the bias that were being, you know, coded into the algorithm and into the work, and nothing happened for 30 years. So
nothing happened.
It's not that
okay.
It's not that the issues haven't been raised. It's the will, right, to actually address it, and to address it intentionally and proactively versus like prioritizing profit. And you know, the tech companies racing each other to be the first one to put out a chat GPT, you know, type tool. So they bypass the bias. What? But yeah, there's bias. You know, 30 years ago we knew this, but we're just going to keep pushing because we're in this capitalist system, in this capitalist game. And it's really bothersome because it's getting to the point where I think it's not just going to be the like lives are going to be damaged
Yeah.
as a result of some of this work. The more that we keep relying on it and thinking that this tool is neutral and knows best.
Yes. Really, really great point, right? So that first point about what can we really do as individuals, and what does that look like, and then also recognizing like the incentives of the world that we live in don't necessarily align with making sure that individual voices are considered, and that diversity is even considered as well, right? Because of, like you said, capitalism, making
Yeah.
money, and this, recognizing that also is an element as well. Do it fast, be the first, make that money.
Be the first, get out there.
Yep.
And then they're getting us to contribute our data, right?
Yes.
By doing things like, send us your image and we'll recreate your image for you in 14th century, whatever. And I really struggled with that. And I saw so many people doing that thing that, you get 20 images or whatever. I don't remember the name of the tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, is it good that we're participating? Because this tool is then gathering that information. And if we don't participate, then it continues without images of people that look like me. Or am I feeding the beast?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. But to your,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was simply just going to say, to your point though, about lives being damaged, I think already lives are being damaged. My sister once told me about how algorithms are used to decide whether or not prisoners in certain states should get parole or not. And, so they do put in certain data points, and based on that, it's not exactly a jury, but it's sort of a panel.
Some kind of predictive.
Yeah. The panel actually uses that data and that information, whatever algorithm it is, to help them decide whether or not that they think they're going to reoffend. And of course, race is there's a high correlation between race and reoffending, simply because, over time, that's just unfortunately who's ended up in jail a lot of times. So people's lives already have been unfortunately damaged by algorithms, and how data is collected and how data is being used as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have someone on the stage who's probably a lot more of an expert than either one of us in data. Is it
Yes.
Am I saying that right? Tanasha, welcome. We look forward to hearing your thoughts.
It's Tanisha. I was just going to piggyback off of what she was saying. I've actually been spending my time reading about the history of Silicon Valley, and I think anytime you look at history and you see how it's repeating in different ways with new catchphrases, it all makes sense. The way, there's a book I'm starting to read. I haven't dove into it. Palo Alto. It's like the history of California, Stanford, and that whole history of like move fast, break things. Like it was embedded from the beginning. Like there were several professors who had like stakes in eugenics, who had like these philosophies of like basically making the brightest student. So basically like their genetics, they would pump out like the smartest students, like generationally. It's a very fascinating, interesting read. And it's been putting things into perspective for me. Like it's really connecting the dots of tech and their play in the war, and how a lot of these companies started out as not direct contractors to the military, but basically they made the chips to them for contractors to work with the military and sell them. So sorry, I don't have any direct like answers to the question that you asked of like how moving forward. I've been thinking about that question a lot too, like moving forward, how can we be more proactive? But I think we're just at a place where so many people aren't educated enough to really understand. Like now the veil is lifting. But just getting everyone involved and understanding, like people who don't work in tech need to know what's going on and know like, hey, this isn't over your head, this affects you. Like they can't like, and what has been used, like just like saying like they've used this whole phrase of like, oh, it was the algorithm that decided,
Yes.
but like there's no way to hold them accountable. Like there's no formal way to be like, okay, well, what variables you use. Like I think the public needs to be able to
Right.
know like what variables, like what is, what is determining these outcomes, and we don't have,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. The algorithm is almost the scapegoat, but it's like, yeah, but you build it, right?
Yeah,
You are
exactly.
deciding and inputting what the algorithm does, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I've already written down that book, so thank you for dropping that gem. And I'm a history nerd, so yeah, I
Yeah.
will be getting into that as well.
That and
Love
Weapons
that.
of Math Destruction, which is
Math
an easier
destruction.
read.
Okay.
Yeah, Weapons of Math Destruction breaks down. That was one of the first books I read a couple of years ago that like opened my eyes, and I was like, whoa, it's all around us.
Huh. Thank you, Tanisha.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
I think I also heard you speak at I think I'm like, I think I saw you somewhere. It was at Puppet. You were leading one of the
Oh,
diversity and inclusion
yeah,
charges that they were leading there, which of course got like scrapped once they got acquired by another company.
yeah.
I was
Oh,
excited to
that's so
see like
cool.
they
Small
were actually
world.
putting in the work,
Tiny.
and I was like,
They
no.
were. They really were. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was introduced to the new folks, but that hasn't gone anywhere. So we'll see. Hopefully they'll have their awakening at some point and pick it back up again. Yeah.
Hopefully, I hope so. But that's all I have to say about
Nice.
that.
Well, thank you
Oh
so
wow.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Love that. Thank you so much. Once again, want to open it up. We have a few minutes left. Anyone else want to share their perspective? Anything that we should read, listen to, watch to help us expand our awareness, and things that we can share with others to support them on, understanding how important it is to know how our data is being
Yeah.
used.
People to follow, maybe we can diversify
Yes.
our feed by following different folks that are doing this work.
As always, you are welcome to raise your hand. We'd love to have you up here, and we'd love to hear what you have to share. Everyone is welcome to contribute. Maybe, I'm thinking of sort of what are sort of next questions, the next things that we should consider in terms of AI. Where, I'm trying to think. Like, I feel like we covered a lot, even with that first question. I think that we got really deep and sort of covered a lot. But what can leaders do? What else can leaders do? How else can they make sure they're creating space to have these conversations, right? What needs to happen?
Yeah. It's kind of the same thing that I, encourage and push leaders to do across the board when they've, committed or are in the process of committing to building a more equitable workplace, is that they have to make a real commitment, and commitment costs something. And I think we have very different definitions of the word commitment, right? I mean, as a someone who's gone through a divorce on a personal level, we can kind of understand in relationships how we have very different definitions of what the word commitment might mean. And I use that as an example to extrapolate to say that for some people, I'm committed, but as soon as I get uncomfortable, I'm no longer committed, or my commitment lessens. So I don't want my commitment to cost me anything. I don't want it to cost me my comfort. I don't want it to cost me my perk, whatever perks or benefits I feel like I have. I do believe that there are people that like the status quo and they want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
And they're not going to say that out loud, right? But that's, even if they haven't consciously accepted it, like that's what their behavior shows. Is you actually are not ready for true equity to take root in this environment, right? So I think that leaders need to do some deep personal reflection and work on how committed they are and what they're willing to sacrifice or lose in service of equity. And so that forces somebody to think about equity outside of themselves and even outside of their individual business or workplace or organization. You know, do you see the overall value? Do you see the societal impact, the generations from now that will benefit from the shift that you are making in your environment, in addition to all the other people that are doing it? It's a movement, right? A movement builds. So, you know, I think leaders have to have that internal reflection, dialogue, and commitment to doing things differently. So when it comes to AI, I think it's the same thing. There's someone I follow on LinkedIn, Michael. Oh, and I am going to jack up the last name, Greenwood or Groenwood. I haven't ever heard it spoken.
Okay.
That does this work. And I was listening to an interview, and they said, ethical AI requires ethical human beings. And I was like, oh, that is the quote right there. So we cannot expect leaders to do ethical AI work or equity work or whatever if they are not individually committed to it and committed at a level that it might cost them something. They might not be the first to get to something, right? to put a product out there.
Yeah.
But can they see the bigger vision, right? And that's hard because, you know, a lot of leaders are put in place because they are capitalists and they're put in those leadership roles to do exactly that. But every now and then you run into a few that are like, yeah, I'm in the seat, but I'm gonna shake things up because I see the vision and I see the value of the work that we're doing. So I think it has to start there. Otherwise, it's not sustainable, right? Otherwise, they're going to do the flashy things, you know, get on the panel discussions and give the speeches or whatever, and then nothing is really being embedded in those companies, and so nothing sticks in the long run. You know, it's that performative work, you know, to kind of, you know, get the PR from it, and then internally you start to realize that it's not really being sustained and embedded in a true way. So that's what I would say, like people that are in leadership positions really need to have some internal dialoguing take place and commit not just to the performative or performative looking things, the flashy things, but embedding, you know, policies and functions into the systems in their companies, and then, you know, prioritizing those functions. You know, a lot of DEI teams have been cut just in the last year or two. And I don't have the data for this, but I'm sure, you know, at all the tech companies that a lot of folks that were in those ethical, you know, AI teams or technology teams were probably cut too at larger numbers than some of the other divisions, right? And so that's where you have to put your, you know, your your money where your mouth is. Like, when you have to make the tough calls, who goes and who stays?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel
right?
like it's
That's
not going
where
to
that
come
commitment
from the
level comes
top
in.
down. Like, I feel, sorry to cut you off.
Please,
I
yeah.
feel like it's not going to come from the top down because, like you said, they have no incentive. And like I've been interested in like labor movements as of recently. We've been seeing those spring up as far as the like Amazon warehouse workers.
Yes,
And
I saw that.
I'm curious to see how that will evolve for tech workers, the people who are actually like engineers and stuff, because we are there. We are the ones actually like coding this technology, and we are still vulnerable to being laid off and all these things too. So I'm just in other fields have had time, since tech is relatively new to like engineering as a whole. Other engineerings have like unions and things like that, but as far as software engineering, there has been no like unions for that, and that's mostly because like we've had great salaries and kickbacks and little toys to play with at work to keep us busy. But now like as companies are starting to take those things away, they are. I'm just curious to see how this will evolve. And
and I think maybe you're hitting on the thing, like, so a lot of times we forget that the change that we were just, I was born into a world where so much work had already happened. The civil rights era had already happened. And we forget that it took a lot of work and movement to bring about that change. And we need to continue to organize in the same way. So I really appreciate that reminder, really, to all of us, that we can't just look to the top of these companies, or whatever, the top level leadership. A lot of time it's the movement work that is happening and the organizing that is happening that ultimately gets that shift and change to happen. And we are still needed. We are the ones we're looking for, right? We still have to continue to do that movement and organizing work even today, around some of the same topics, but they're presenting differently in today's world than maybe 50 years ago and before.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting element, especially since from some people's perspective, AI is going to replace potentially some jobs as well, right? Like that's also a big thing that a lot of individuals are speaking about.
Yeah.
And so seeing it from the other angle, I think is important as well. The people who are building it, what does it mean for them? And then the people that, supposedly are going to be replaced, where do they go as well?
Right.
All right. Well, I want to just do one last call for any other questions, any other contributions. Is there something that we're missing? Is there something that you're dying to contribute? Please raise your hand so that you can join us on the stage. We'd love to hear from you. All right. I see Singleton.
Last call. Oh, we've got someone.
Yes, I'm excited. This has been such a great conversation. Hello. Welcome to the stage. Singleton.
Oh, you're on mute.
Hopefully I'm saying it correctly. You are on mute. Please go ahead and unmute and share.
Yeah.
Oh, she's still muted. All right. Well, whenever you're ready to unmute, we'd love to hear from you. Dropped back down. All right. Well, we'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to contribute, we do have a few minutes left. Maybe just to close us off, if there are no other questions or no one else wants to join us, what are your last words? Olanike, what should people keep in mind, right? We've had, I think, a very nice, wide-ranging discussion, but what are your key takeaways?
My go-to these days when I'm unable to see the next thing that I'm supposed to do, or like I want to support, I want to join that movement and be a part of amplifying a message or making change, is that I don't always need to know the next thing to do. I don't need to always have the answers. But if I'm in community with other people who are asking the same questions, and we're committed to continuing and to follow that through, that the next steps will reveal themselves. Somebody will come with the next idea. Somebody will have access to maybe an action that we need to take, or a book we need to read. Even this call today is an example of that. I'm walking away with some new resources to go and do some more learning, right? So my takeaway is, and what I hope that we will all do, those of us that are paying attention to this and care about this, is that we'll continue to put ourselves in community with others, because I think that is how we will figure out what at least the next answer is. Until we ask the next set of questions, I need to come up with further answers. And there's an author, she's more than an author, Adrienne Marie Brown, who has a quote that I can't really remember right now, but it's something about feeling our way forward together. Ooh. And that's what I kind of like. It's a visual statement. It's almost like you feel like you can't really see what the next thing is. You don't know what that next thing is that you need to do, or the next step you need to take, but together we can feel our way forward. We just have to prioritize and commit to the movement, So I think it's my takeaway for myself, but also what I would like to leave with those listening.
I love that. You're getting some claps, some great reactions from the audience. Thank you so much for joining me today, Olanike. Thank you all so very much also for joining, and everyone who contributed and shared their thoughts. I agree. I think it's through having conversations like this where we all can build our awareness and really just gain a better understanding of our world. Because whether or not we want to admit it, and as I mentioned, those of you who were here earlier, I did a LinkedIn poll, obviously not scientific, but the majority, 33% of the people who participated in the poll thought that they never used AI in their daily lives. And the truth is all of us do. So it's definitely something that all of us should consider. Olanike, can you please let everyone know where they can find out more about you if they want to connect and if they want to keep the conversation going?
Oh, wonderful. I am active on LinkedIn, so you can find me on my name. Just Google that and you'll find me. I also have a couple of hashtags that I use pretty regularly. Mosaic, the digit 4 equity. Mosaic 4 equity is a hashtag that if you just look for that on Instagram, I have an account there as well, or on LinkedIn, I will come up. That's also my website, Mosaic, the digit 4 equity, mosaic4equity.com. So you can find me in any of those places. And I just want to say thank you, Akua, for hosting this conversation. I mean, this is part of the work is creating spaces for community to come together. So I appreciate that you've made space to have this conversation today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So everyone, please make sure you click on Olanike's face and follow her because I think that she shares some really amazing insights and things that are really going to make you think, which I think is always great. Oh, wow. There was one person who had his hand raised and then it went away. Okay. Because we were just rounding up. Just want to say to everyone, thank you all so very much for joining us on this Friday. You honestly could be anywhere. So I just really appreciate that you've joined us, especially those of you who joined us for this entire time or shared your perspective or had a question. I really appreciate it. We're here every single Friday at the same time. I will be taking a break sometime in March, but I'll let people know. So I hope you're able to make it to our next event. Next week, we're going to be talking about wellness. And if anyone here wants to join me in a conversation or wants to co-host a conversation on DEI or anything, please feel free to reach out. It's always a lot of fun to connect, meet new people, and share ideas. So thank you all so very much once again for joining. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and have an amazing